So thank you, all of you, for sharing this film with us. I want to start by, as I understand it, there's a personal connection to the events at the center of this film, and I wondered if you could start by sharing how you started to tell this story and how you got your hands on the footage so quickly to begin making the film.
Sure. So thank you all again for being here tonight. So Ajika Owens was a friend of our family, and by our, I mean Nikon Kwantu and I. So Nikon is my producer on this, but he is also my life partner. So, and some of the family is here. Takima, do you mind standing up? This is Takima Robinson, one of our VPs, also a family member. And then Nikon, you can talk about how we ended up with this footage.
Sure. So, my family member, Takima's sister Kim, was also a very good friend of Ajika, and basically we wanted to come down and we wanted to come to Florida to help out, to get the word out. We didn't know what would happen with Susan. She wasn't arrested at the time, and we wanted to make sure that we can put pressure on the courts and on the police. And so we decided we were going to shoot footage and, get that out there. A couple of months later, we got some footage from Anthony Thomas, who was a family lawyer. And he did the Freedom of Information Act, or through the Freedom of Information Act, he got a bunch of footage of anything concerning Susan, calling police or police activity or whatever the case. And we got just tons of stuff. We got ring footage. We got a bunch of body cam footage, and the interviews, the interrogations. We got all of this stuff. And once we looked at it all together, it started to tell a story about this community, and actually it showed the community, and it also showed Susan. So we decided that this would be the story, and I came to Geeta and was like, I think we should move with this.
So as Nikon said, we didn't originally set out to make a film, but the body camera footage, so it came to us in a jumble. Really, it was just on a drive. It was a mess. It was not organized. Some people were redacted. Some people were not. There was all the different types of material, including interviews, so detective interviews, which you hear in here, with the community after the fact, all the 911 calls, dash cam footage. So I've used to be an editor, and I think we felt really compelled to put this footage together in some kind of order, to try to organize it, to understand what had happened. It was grief work for us, but also just, again, how we needed to know how and why, how someone could pick up a gun and shoot their neighbor over such a trivial dispute as children playing in a yard that they were allowed to play in. So I functioned as the assistant editor and pieced it together over a couple of weeks with Nikon's help and put it in a timeline. And we realized it went back 2 years. And we realized at that point that we had something in our hands that you never see, which is a story, basically when, unfortunately, these crimes happen all too often and we only see the aftermath. But in this, we have the community, and you also have Susan, but as they were prior to the crime. You have the lead up, and you get to see this beautiful community living together, playing together, the children kind of taking care of each other, in this tight-knit way, and how all of that was disrupted by one person with a gun. So we really felt that this was a story that we needed to tell, and we got Pam's blessing. She was very generous, and here we are.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about, Pam, you giving your blessing and how early you became involved, and the conversations you all had about your involvement and what this project is going to be, because this is obviously, for you, very immediately, very sensitive project. So I'm very curious about your involvement.
I wasn't involved in the making of the film or how it was going to be constructed. That was totally up to Geeta and the film team. Geeta, I completely trusted Geeta. Geeta has become family to me. So when Geeta had the rough cut and she presented it to me, and I watched, I didn't know what exactly I was going to see. Unbeknownst to me, it played like a film. It played like a horror story of my family, of the tragic events. Again, we have 2 years, all of the disputes. We have that tragic night of the events. We have the court hearings. We have the sentencing. It was a very hard watch, very necessary. I love the idea that it was not a narrative in the terms of it was not interviews, because by it being police body cam footage, you get the real deal. You see what happens. It's no one's opinions, it's no biases, it's factual. And I appreciated that. It honored my daughter's legacy and her truth and what happened, how her death was senseless and should have never happened. And I appreciated the amazing work of art, although tragic, but it is art and how it was created. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be in this space with this amazing team and to share this with the world, because unfortunately we do know that violence is going to continue to happen. And this sheds the light on laws like Stand Your Ground that unfortunately people of color are often the victims of. It shows racism. It shows what happens when guns are placed in the wrong hands. So it is educational, it's enlightening, and it's truth, and it's factual.
For me, I think something that is so compelling about this is also just not only the portrait of community that we get, but the fact that you are knowingly, police body cam footage is of course fraught. These are difficult images. These are images of a particular source, and the tension. I wonder if we could talk a bit about the tension between kind of the portrait of the community that we're building, the portrait of these incidents as they're happening, our very keen sense of the neighbors' children. By the end of the film, I feel like I know the street. But this is all also being mediated through this very fraught medium of police body cam footage. So I wonder if we could talk a bit about that.
Sure, I'd like to take part of that question, and I'd like to hand the rest of it to my producer, Alisa. So basically, we were very aware that police body camera footage is often it's a violent tool of the state that's often used to criminalize, particularly our communities, people of color. It's used to criminalize us, to dehumanize us, to surveil us, and to protect the police, right? And for them to justify their actions. I think something that I wanted to do as a filmmaker was to subvert that narrative with the use of it. We wanted to take it and flip it on its head, because unintentionally, the police, again, they entered the community again and again, and you could see in the interactions with them, obviously the community is, again, is very aware of who they're talking to and act accordingly. But again, the police unintentionally captured the life of the community. Like you said, they capture the kids playing. They capture the neighbors who are, again, who are raising these children together, basically. And this is a diverse community. It's an interracial community. But you have the father who comes out and says, I look out for all these kids like they're my own. You have one of the neighbors who, when asked by the police, which kid is yours, she goes, oh, they're all mine, And then you have the children themselves who are so secure, so loved, and they're polite to the police as well, excuse me, but then they're also very confident and precocious and secure, and they feel safe in that neighborhood, and they feel safe with the adults, to a certain degree, even the police, that they'll talk to them and say things like, we're only 11, and that sort of stuff. So I think our really what we wanted to do, again, was that subversion, and to use it for a different purpose than it is normally used for. And that was, that was deeply important to us. But I'd like Alisa to talk a little bit more.
We certainly understand that audiences see this, and you and I talked a little bit behind the scenes, that when audiences see this, depending on your vantage point and who you are and your background, you're going to look at this possibly and say, oh, the police were great. But were they? At the end of the day, look, I see you, right? A fellow Black woman, right? So at the end of the day, the worst possible outcome happened because of their biases, because they never ever instructed the other side to fill out a report, and they never did what they told Ajika in the beginning, that if someone were to be trespassed twice on your property, they'll take you away. What about when someone is harassing and there are credible claims they are practicing hate speech and threatening children? And so, because of their biases, because of who she was, they allowed the worst possible outcome to happen. And the community was terrorized by her again and again and again for 2 years that she lived there. And Geeta will say that also the system failed Susan as well, because she's now in jail.
Yeah. To this point, to these questions about the nature of the footage, I also wanted to talk a bit about how you as filmmakers decide what to do with images of essentially someone's worst day, a family's worst day. I think I've seen the film multiple times, and I'm always taken aback and really moved, but also, troubled and kind of hurt by seeing what happens after the shooting and the dealing with how to tell the kids, how to tell the community the things that we're seeing, her after she's been shot. As filmmakers who want to obviously tell this story responsibly, I immediately could imagine that there had to be a number of conversations about how you were going to navigate, because you're not trying to sensationalize. So how you're going to navigate the necessary endpoint of body cam footage like this, which is that after a violent incident, you get footage of the worst thing imaginable. And how do you navigate that?
So I think it is very complicated, and we did have a lot of conversations amongst ourselves. I also just have to say I had the most amazing editor, Viri Diana Lieberman, who is here somewhere. Viri, can you wave? She's in the back. But so there was a lot of conversations with her, but also amongst ourselves. And although Pam was not, like she said, she was not involved in the filmmaking process at all. I asked her if we could make a film. She said, yes. But she, in the conversations we had with her, Pam, we discussed, and even with Takima, and we talked about Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till, who Pam takes a lot of strength from. And I think what we do in this film is ask for our audience to bear witness with us, bear witness to what happened to this community, to Ajika, to Pam and her family. And that can be challenging and that can be painful. But if we don't bear witness, then these sort of things can happen in the dark, right? These sort of things, we don't shine a spotlight on these these things up to greater atrocities. They continue to be perpetrated. And we feel, and we think about Emmett Till, and Mamie Till, his mother, who demanded or insisted on an open casket funeral and invited reporters in to take pictures of her son so the world would see what happened to her baby. That's what she wanted, because she knew it would impact change. And we think about George Floyd. Unfortunately, if we had not all seen that video, what would have happened, right? But that video sparked a world movement. So yes, it is difficult and it is painful. And again, we did not share in the film absolutely everything from that night, but we felt that it was important that people see the real impact of gun violence happening live. Like this is racially motivated gun violence, and often we unfortunately are a society that has become numb to it. We tolerate it, and so we hope that this film can maybe reach the right hearts and minds to again impact change as we all want to.
Pam, I wanted to ask you about whether or not you've been able to show the film to other people from the community, to other people in your family, and what that has been like for you.
Recently, we did do a screening in Ocala for the community where Ajika resided. That was probably, outside of watching it for the very first time, the most intense experience with the film. I was amongst, family, because we became family because we all experienced a tragic loss on that evening. That family, that community was thriving as a family. They were raising children together. They were deeply impacted by the loss of Ajika. the community is no longer the same. Lots have moved away, families have broken up. So it didn't just impact myself and my family, it impacted that community greatly, and friends alike, as well as family. It was, we share a bond and that community, because you saw the outrage and you saw the anger and you saw the hurt, and that's much of what I experience, the kids experience. That's something that we live on a daily basis. So it was, we are bonded by that loss, the loss of my daughter, forever.
I wanted to open up to the audience to see if anyone had any questions. I think we have a microphone. Yeah, we have a microphone running around in case anyone has. Don't be stunned into silence.
I know folks might still be processing.
Yeah,
but
of course.
We are here.
Yes. There's a microphone coming to you.
Now that you've had time to look back on everything that happened, I don't know if you know anything about Susan's background that might explain how she became this person that she is in the footage.
So Susan, I mean, I think there was a trial, and there were many things brought up in the trial, but honestly, to us, they didn't factor into the case, so it didn't matter. It wasn't relevant to the case. So, yeah, there isn't much to point to.
Yeah.
Why she is this way.
And also, I think that it's not rational. So audiences always say Susan must be mentally ill. Susan was tested and they didn't find mental illness. And we always, as filmmakers, say that people who are diagnosed with mental illness are not implicitly violent. So we shouldn't go to that, right? So Susan, there was no found mental illness. This was definitely rage, racism, and, hate.
And the judge, as you saw, ruled that it was anger and not fear. So that was the decision that the court came to.
Thank you for this film. It does so much. I'm very loud. Thank you so much for this film. It's helping us to bear witness to what happened. I think there's been a conversation for a few years now about the idea of privilege. And even if it wasn't intentional here, it really, 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 really comes through. And I wonder what you think about that and what you think about communicating that, what I would say as a fact, that Susan Lawrence experienced a great deal, was treated with privilege. How do you think that will come through? And also, did the audience in Ocala react similarly?
Ocala was outraged. This was senseless. It should have never happened. We have a single mom who was the sole provider, caring for her children. She did what any other mother would do. There was a dispute. Susan threw a skate, took her child's tablet. The child came home. Actually, Susan told my grandson, "Go tell your mother." So she knew that Ajika was coming over. Susan didn't open the door. My daughter did not open the door. She wasn't breaking down the door. She shot through her locked metal door. So of course the community would be outraged.
I knew about the privilege.
It was intentional.
Yes,
It was
yeah.
intentional.
But the way that police treated
Yeah, I think I want to say that one of the things that my editor has always said is Susan absolutely tried to weaponize her race, her privilege, her status. She tried to weaponize the police against the community and stand your ground. But you see it in the footage. Again, we did not set out to make, we set out to trust our audience, as Viri always said. We need to trust our audience. Our audience is smart. They will see it for themselves. They will see how the police handle it with kid gloves. Susan's side of this story is in this film. We are documentary filmmakers. In our hearts, we're going to show the story as it was. We're going to stick, again, some people say truth is objective, or subjective. But we were going to stick as closely to the truth as we could. The footage is as you see it, and it was we purposely made it chronological so you could see the incidents build and as they built. But Susan 100, there is a scene where the officers come to her door and she has, rammed her truck into a tow pound, and damaged someone's property. And at that point, there is no question of like, should we check if she has a gun? Should we, there was nothing done. She was just, a nuisance. The neighbors were told, just stay away from her, leave her alone. She was never seen as a threat, but she knew that. She weaponized it. And you want to get up.
And,
you
and
can
the
see it.
neighborhood, the neighbors knew. So there's a scene when one of the neighbors, Phyllis is her name, she's yelling at the police officers when Susan goes to pack her stuff. And she says, and she's white, right? And she says, why don't you treat her kid the way you treat ours, right? Now, Phyllis has biracial children, right? So she knows the difference. As a white woman, she knows the difference between the way her children will be seen and the way, it wasn't Susan's child, it was her nephew, but the way he would be seen, right? So the neighborhood certainly understood that she was weaponizing her privilege. Yeah.
I think too the scene at the end, which we chose, Viri and I, and to play long, that whole scene where the police spend a couple, like 5 minutes sort of almost begging and pleading with her to come out of her chair so that they can. If that had been anyone else, if that had been a person of color, I think we know what would have happened. But you see, the police are absolutely floored by her. And I am obsessed with that chair. I just want to say, like, when they finally take her out of the room, we left the scene long because we wanted you all, the audience, to have a chance to process what was happening, just this, and have a moment to breathe. But some of this, again, this is, it's what happened, that. So for us, that was really important. It was really important to stay in that truth. Thank you so much for this film, and thank you for.
There's a mic coming to you. Making our mic guy really run around. Sorry about that.
This isn't a clear question, but I just the ending. I'm curious, like, how you guys, when it shifts to no longer being police footage, I'm just really curious how you guys came around to what that would look like, what that would be, because I know what I felt, but I sort of like am curious how you did it, if that makes sense.
So some of that footage is footage. So when we were originally on the ground, we shot, basically, there was the vigils, the funerals. That was the material that we had shot at that time. And we didn't, again, the ending of the film was a question for us. We didn't want, originally, we could have ended with the door shut, the investigator reading the note and then walking out. When he reads what Susan wrote. We didn't want, ultimately, when we thought about it, we didn't want Susan or that moment to have the last word. We really wanted to recenter the family, and we had that material, so we put it in. We also, Viri edited that together. We also had the beautiful speech that Al Sharpton did. We thought was so important, and Pam having the last word, where she talks about being Ajika's mother and who she was, Pam, and then her grandson. So. And we wanted to leave the family, to leave you all with that, because this little piece of Florida has both, again, there was Susan, and she was, again, and what she did, and the sort of horror of that. But there was also the best of us in there. That community is the best of us. So we sort of wanted to make sure that people also took that away, from the film. So that was part of the decision. To come back to that footage. There is other footage we shot in the film as well, which is the interstitials that you see, which is B-roll. Some of that, there is some dash cam in there, but the B-roll of the neighborhood, this sort of suggestive B-roll, we wanted to really bring you into that space. But also, we wanted folks to feel uncomfortable. It is meant to play like a thriller, but that footage is meant to be evocative.
There's something really haunting about the audio of the detective interviews over that B-roll. I don't really know how to explain the effect it has on me, but in addition to tying things together, I feel there is something procedural about it, in the sense of we're building a case. We're building toward the case that we get in the film, but we're also it's like Legos or stacking them on top of each other toward this is the footage of the community. These are the things that the people feel about it. This is what the community says about her. It's a very damning case against her. And it all kind of, all these voices just sort of come together in a way that I find really powerful.
That is the first time I've heard a Lego analogy. I like that.
Well, you know.
But I also, I just want to say, too, we have some other people. We have Sam Bisbee, who's one of our other producers in the front row, and Rose Arce, who's one of our executive producers, along with Soledad O'Brien, who couldn't be here tonight. And Morgan. Yeah, there's some other people from the team, Morgan and one of our producers, and Danielle. Danielle also was there. Associate.
I just want to thank you for this film. It's just really amazing. And I think it's such a timely story to be told at this particular moment. And I also just thought, wow, a great way of sort of explaining the two-tier justice system without sort of an overarching narrative behind it. That was so powerful because it's left up to you to witness it yourself without anyone telling you what you're saying. You cannot deny what you're saying. And it just really struck me about Susan's white privilege, how she was treated throughout the whole process was just stunning to me. I mean, that was one of the most powerful things that actually came out through this movie. And I'm so sorry for your loss and that it had to be, done this way. But you know what? Her loss, it was not this story. It's like not in vain, Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Allowing this to share her story. And I'm just, again, very, very, very sorry. In this movie, it really moved me. And so thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
So I really thought it was important to have her story told for several reasons. I really considered the effect, first of all, that it would have on our family. Secondly, the community, and then what the lasting impact of the film in terms of overall activism and reform and change. Ashika was first a single mom. She was a sole provider for her children. She was a super mom. She made the hard sacrifices. She was very present in her children's lives. She sacrificed to put them in private school. She had them in, my granddaughter in gymnastics, cheer. She was a cheer mom, football mom. And she did that all solo by herself. She had deep-rooted faith, and her children were honor roll students, so she was very involved in their education. But as a single mom, she had struggles, financial struggles. So she had really big dreams, and we would often sit on the phone and strategize about different ideas for businesses and how she could improve her circumstances. She was very adamant because she would throw out these ideas, and I was not always on board. I was like, I don't know about that. But if you know Ashika, she's just so full of life and just this big personality. And she was like, well, you know what? The world is going to know my name. The world is going to know my name. Like this, whatever idea she had, it was just going to be that successful, and it was just going to just blow up, and the world would know her name. And it's through this film, and unfortunately through her death, that the world does know her name. But we carry on her legacy through the film, and also through finding, I always say we don't know why, how, or when, or the whys of things that happen. I don't understand why this happened, but I do know that I can't just sit back and allow my grief to succumb to me, to overtake me. Oh, I shouldn't succumb to my grief. And I had to find a way to move forward. So one was allowing this beautiful film to move forward into the world, and also to help others who may also be, unfortunately, impacted by something similar. We know that gun violence is an issue. We know that racial violence is going to continue. So with that, myself and Geeta and Nikon's sister Takima Robinson, who is deeply rooted in philanthropy and social justice, we started a fund called Standing in the Gap. And that's what this team did for me. They stood in the gap for me. I wasn't prepared financially to take on 4 children. I had to relocate. I lost my job. And it was undue hardship, but I had a group of people who were surrounded me and supported me, and that's what we want to do with people or families who suffer losses such as that. We want to relieve the burden, the financial stresses that they have. There's funeral costs, there's mental health, there's wellness, there's legal aid. We even had to get security because of the nature and the death threats that we were receiving. So these are things that we often don't consider. Relocation costs, childcare. We also are involved in activism, social justice. We want to reform gun laws. We want to repeal stand your ground laws that exist in approximately 38 states. That it's unfortunate that people of color are most impacted by this. So the fund, Standing in the Gap, is meant to do just that, stand in the gap, and to help relieve some of the stresses that families impacted by violence, racial violence, will incur.